Hello, lovely folks of YouTube, Ren here. So I have a plant that I want to talk about. It's really hard to see it though because it grows so close to the ground. So when I'm talking about the anatomy of this plant, we'll get in a little bit closer, but some of you may recognize this little thing right here. It's violets. Violets are really prolific at this time of year. The violet, of course, that I'm talking about is the Viola species. There's a wide variety of species within that Viola genus, but those are the violets we're talking about. We're not talking about African violets, which is a completely different species, usually grown as houseplants. African violets are poisonous. The Viola species are not. So definitely make sure that you know which one you're talking about. But yes, Viola is very popular, very widely used. It is edible. Most people are familiar with these little flowers as being candied, the candied flowers. Pansies are also part of the Viola species, so that's another really common one that gets candied as well. But because not only the flowers are edible, but also the leaves as well. I like to eat them early. They tend to get a little bit fibrous later on, but why don't we take a closer look and then I'll talk some more about this plant, and then we'll come back and I'll talk about some of the magical uses of this plant. So these are some of my violets here. They were sitting right behind me where I was sitting. Now my violets are the Viola Sororia, which is also known as the wood violet or the common blue violet. This is the native North American violet. It is oftentimes considered to be a weed in a lot of places. Very distinctive, these little heart-shaped leaves, and of course the distinctive blue violet flowers with the two uprights and then the one down below. It is very close in appearance to the scented violet, which is the Viola odorata. That's the one that's more commonly grown in gardens because it is scented and it smells like violets. These violets do not have a fragrance. That's the main way that you can tell the difference between them. But other than that, they look very similar to each other and they can be used pretty interchangeably. So now these flowers that you see, the ones that the Viola Sororia sets in the spring, these are not typically seed-bearing flowers. They basically just sort of make these flowers just for the sheer joy and exuberance of it. The true seed flowers are actually usually made in the fall, and they're cleistogamous, which means that they are self-fertilizing, and they basically look sort of just like the pod without the petals. So they are not showy at all. One of the lessons that we can take from this is that, you know, violet is for sharing happiness and joy, just because, you know, it's making these flowers just for the sheer exuberance of it, and that's lovely. So, these little leaves that I was telling you about, the heart-shaped leaves, they're typically better when they're still kind of curled, like this one is. Once they open fully, they get a little bit more fibrous. So, anyway, we'll go back and we'll talk some more. So I know I mentioned that this plant is widely considered to be a weed by a lot of people. It grows very readily in any kind of dappled shade, which as you can see is exactly what we're sitting in right here. It is a perennial, at least the Viola odorata and Viola sororia are, and tends to actually form a rhizome along the ground. So it will spread in clumps through that rhizome in addition to setting seed, which is one of the reasons why it's so prolific, and people who are trying to grow that perfect grass lawn find it such a nuisance. Personally, I love them. I never take them out of my lawn. They grow very readily, mostly in the shady spots of my yard, but they're beautiful and they're a lovely ground cover because of that sort of clumping habit that they have. So let's talk about some of the magical uses of this plant. Not surprisingly, this plant is associated with Venus and also the element of water. It has the energy of sort of comforting, dealing with loss, and bringing friendship and happiness. This is a plant that was widely used to, during the funerals and to decorate the graves of children during Victorian times because of those properties. It can be used in love magic, but it's more for relationship building rather than like the big amorous kind of love herbs that you typically associate with love. And it does have some elements of protection and bringing luck as well. It is associated with Ostara, obviously. This is the time of year that it is most prolific in blooming. It can utilize that energy to sort of ease the transition into a new beginning or starting a new project. And then, of course, the leaves and flowers can be used in tea for those things. You can candy the flowers. You can use the leaves in like a healing salve, or my personal favorite use is as an edible green. I love to put it in salads, in my spring soups. It's delicious. It tastes sort of reminiscent of spinach, actually. Kind of like chickweed. Chickweed also tastes like spinach to me. A lot of things that are green just taste like spinach. It's a very mild flavored green. Like I said, it does tend to be a little more fibrous, a little more toothsome, especially as they're older. So definitely pick the leaves when they're young. And that's one of the reasons I prefer to use it in soups, is because it holds itself well in a soup, but in a salad it tends to be a little more chewy. So, but yeah, it's a really lovely little plant. You can take the flowers. If you're not going to candy them, you can also infuse them into a simple syrup and make violet syrup. It's another good use. Violet syrup was also used as a cough remedy, actually, but it's hard to tell whether the action is actually the violets themselves or just the coating action of the sugar syrup. So yeah, but it's a very gentle, very harmless plant. And it's one that's really good to have in your garden. So if, like me, you lucked out and you had them just growing wild, then count yourself fortunate. If you are not like me and you don't have them in your yard, you can probably find them. You might even have a neighbor who has them growing in their lawn and they want to get rid of them, and they will be happy to let you dig them out. So anyway, that's all I have for you today. Take that down because it's just making noise. I hope this video finds you well, and I will see you again soon.